Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Family is Hard podcast. I am Dave, and I am joined by my better half, my wife, Monica. Monica, say hello.
Hello.
And this is our introduction of our podcast. We're going to tell you what it's all about. But this is the Family is Hard podcast, as I said, where we discuss the humorous side of parenting and family life. We will give you forewarning. This podcast is not really safe for work, and it's not safe for children. We're not going to filter ourselves. And some of the stories we're going to tell over the course of this podcast is probably not intended for minors. So you can find us online at Twitter at Family is Hard, all one word. And when you're on there, you can join in the storytelling and the fun telling families stories of yours using the hashtag Family is Hard. And you can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/Family is Hard. And you can also tell stories there and join in because everybody's got family stories. But we have a very unique family, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So Monica, let's talk about you and I. We're not gonna have, we're gonna have kids on a lot of these podcasts. We've got 5 children between the two of us, and we have other family members that might make appearances. But what we're going to talk about today is just you and I, how this family came to be, because we're a unique family. We're a blended family. So Monica, why don't you jump in and talk about how you and I know each other?
Well, our initial knowing of each other comes from high school. I was a senior when I believe you were a sophomore.
Yes.
Yes. And he hung out with some friends, one of whom tortured me endlessly and called me, oh my gosh, yes, he called me an ice princess. So he was horrible to me, but
Okay.
Dave I always thought was a little cute.
Okay, so let's pause right there because the one thing we're going to do is we're going to tell both sides of the story. That's why our kids are going to be on a lot of times to tell their side of the story. So let me tell my side of this part. Nobody was horrible to you, and if you were called Ice Princess, it's because, let's be frank, you were a little preppity and uppity.
Yes.
Yes.
But there's no need to call names.
You say it's calling names. I say it's just pointing out the obvious. I didn't call you anything, but
no,
okay.
You didn't.
All right. So that's how we initially met. We didn't really know each other per se.
No. We kind of like weaved in and out of each other's lives over a course of from like high school until our first date.
Yes. In high school, you wouldn't have had anything to do with me because I was a long-haired guitar-playing hippie, and Miss Prep would not have even given me the time of day. I can tell you that right now.
He doesn't know what he's talking about for the most part.
Absolutely do. You would not know. You would not have.
In my defense, you were hiding those pretty blue eyes under some of the most awful glasses I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about high school fashion sense here because my glasses might have been big, but it was nowhere in the verb of how big your hair was.
It was the 90s. That was okay.
Yeah, maybe then, not in retrospect so much. I think everybody has made questionable choices in life with such things. So
yes, definitely.
Okay, so then continue on. So that was high school. Then we all did our own things and went down a couple of wretched paths, so to speak.
Yes, we went down our own paths, and then we kind of intersected again. There was an incident where you were working at the time at one of those office places, Office Depot, Office Mart, Office PetSmart, I don't know what it was. And I had been out with friends when the place that I worked contacted me, and I wasn't supposed to be working, and said, hey, we're out of printer paper. And I had to go buy printer paper. And I was about 3 margaritas in. And while I was at Office PetSmart or whatever it was, I thought it would be fun to sit in a rolly chair and have my friend push me around the store at a high rapid speed.
As is custom, when you want to go buy paper, you have to be rolled around in a rolly chair.
And all of a sudden, you step out and you're like, stop. And we both were like children who had just been caught with our hands in the cookie jar.
Yes.
So that was the next place our lives kind of intersected.
Yes.
But then like they fully collided back in 2002 when we were both in a bookstore and we actually collided with one another.
Yes. Well, now up to this point, we had both been previously married and both
Yes.
had children. I had 3 children. You had 2 children.
Yes, all boys.
Yes, and I'm sure um, some of the remnants of these marriages, and we're not here to disparage anybody,
No.
but there was the dark days with these 2 marriages. Let's just put it that these 2 marriages were not meant to be. They produced 5 very wonderful children between the
So,
two.
yeah, so we're grateful for that.
Yes, but the marriages themselves were miserable,
Just
and I would
yes.
believe all 4 parties involved in these 2 marriages would agree if
Yes.
they were being honest.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yes, we were in a bookstore, and yeah, go ahead. You're telling it. Go ahead.
I'm telling it.
Yeah.
And I was paying attention and you just walked right into me.
Well, okay. I guess I don't know.
That actually wasn't true.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I was not paying attention and I did
Yes.
the walking into someone. But
Which is actually is a mark of your life. It's just
it is. If you were to ask 100 people that know me, they would all be like, yes, that sounds about right.
to be fair. At least you were upright this time and not in a rolling chair.
That
But
is true. And I was not highly inebriated.
yes, true.
Yeah.
So
So
yes, so we made contact, but in a
we
different
make
scenario
contact.
of both of us being available and
Yes.
not being 2 years apart in high school, and not one of
No.
us being preppity and uppity, and
And not one of us
and the
being a
others
hippie.
the other one being a dirty hip. Well, okay, I was not a dirty hip. I was never dirty. I've
You
never been
were a
dirty in my
dirt
life.
hippie. You take like 12 showers a
I
day.
do.
There's no way you would
can
be dirty.
and yes, in that sense, you can never call me dirty. Sometimes my
No.
humor might be jaded, but
Yes.
yes, you can. I was a hippie. Yes, and actually,
Absolutely.
as you'll see over the course of this, I'm still a hippie at heart. I still
Yes.
lean towards some of those thinkings and my views. And we're not going to get necessarily political on this podcast, but
No.
it's a chance that every once in a while you'll get to see our leanings, and that's okay. But and my musical choices and so on, yes, I still lean that way, which is also odd because running the track of your preppity uppityness, you like bubblegum and boy bands and weird
Don't
trashy music and
don't let him fool you. He's a huge Swiftie.
I'm sure over the course of this podcast, my disdain for Taylor Swift will become apparent. It just
So anywho, so we realized we knew each other from high school, and we talked briefly and went about our days, and a couple of days later, this is back in the day before the internet was fleshed out the way it is now.
yes,
And the big thing was Yahoo Messenger.
yes,
Everybody communicated by Yahoo Messenger. You went to chat rooms about whatever, Star Trek or the New Kids on the Block or cooking. Or, some people went to chat rooms for other reasons, but we won't go there. But anyway, and I was actually in a cooking chat room because that is like one of my passions. And all of a sudden this message popped up. And I'm a super friendly person, and part of the screen name had the word Indiana, and I thought, oh, probably just someone who saw me in the cooking chat room. And I'm chatting, and I start realizing that it's male. And the more we chat, this person's not saying that they know me, but they know enough that I'm starting to get freaked out. And so finally I'm just like, okay, hold the phone. Who are you? And he told me who he was. So we chatted for a while and got to know each other and became very friendly. And like I said, we were kind of in different places a little bit because my marriage had been over for a couple years, but legally I was still married. We weren't together or even living together. There was no hopes of us getting back together. It was simply that I had already paid my part of the divorce filing and I was waiting for him to pay his. And I was just kind of being a stubborn bitch. So I was just
Mm-hmm.
waiting for him to pay his. I had no reason to pay it for him to get it done and over with. That's kind of where I was. So I was a couple of years out of being, and Dave was newly single. Had been on his own, and they'd been separated for several months. But it's I don't know. It's two different places. It was still pretty raw for him still, and for me, it was kind of like, okay, I'm just waiting for this guy to pay for his, and then I'm done. So,
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
um,
so tell him what the smooth talking hippie did next though.
so he and I are just at that point we had progressed to talking on the phone some, and always after the kids were in bed, and it was usually late. And he told me that his sister had fixed him up
Well, hold on,
with
because at this point all the kids are very young.
very young. Our oldest is my oldest son, and he at the time was in first grade.
Yes.
And then the youngest would have been his youngest from his first marriage, and Noah was just had his first birthday a few months before,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
then
go ahead.
stair steps in between.
Yes.
And so he told me that his sister had fixed him up on a blind date, and that he was really nervous about it. And I, on the other hand, had been dating for some time, not successfully. I mean, I'll just be straight up honest. I pretty much had sworn men off because it had ran the gamut from okay but boring, and then all the way to while we're on our date, his wife showed up. Yeah, that bad. So I said to him, I'm like, well, hey, we'll go have dinner. Dress up like you're gonna go on a date. And we'll just kind of go over feeling comfortable and small talk and that kind of stuff. And he's like, that's great, that would be amazing. So we make plans to go to a Chinese restaurant. It's a Chinese buffet, which anybody that knows me knows that I hate buffets. So I kind of was like, okay, I'll do this for you. And we go. And you could tell he was nervous. So but here I am sitting over here thinking, okay, he told me he's nervous. Let's, so I'm like, tell me about your kids. What kind of, we talked baseball because we both like baseball, and I kept, and he kind of loosened up a little bit. And so once he was kind of loosened up, I'm like, so tell me about this girl that you're gonna go out with. And there's this like weird look that crosses his face, and he's like, yeah, well, my sister met her at her work. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, well, what does this girl do for a living? And he's like, she's an exterminator. And I'm
now,
like, she's a what?
now, to be fair, hold on. To be fair, my sister had mentioned, oh, there's this girl at work. Maybe you ought to go out with her sometime. I don't know who this girl was. I don't know anything about her. Nothing ever happened after that. So that's how this sliding started. So there was this little, I don't even know what, speck of truth that I guess there was a girl there. I don't know who she was. And I mean, never thinking,
Is she an exterminator?
I don't know. My sister wasn't an exterminator, so I don't know if she met her at work. How I thought that was going to work. That
Oh, and I think it's interesting to note that his sister and his soon-to-be ex-wife work together. So why I didn't pick up and was like, surely she wouldn't fix him up with someone from her work, because that's where his ex-wife works too. But no, I walked right into this completely trustworthy. It's those blue eyes, I'm telling you.
well, I don't know.
And so anyway, I say, exterminator? And he's like, yeah, she's an exterminator. But at this point, he starts getting all like shifty again. And I'm like, Okay, something's not right here. When did you actually tell me you weren't going on a date? Was it out in the
Um,
parking, or was
maybe
it? Oh no, it was.
because I'm pretty sure I don't know because okay, I believe was it not raining?
It was,
Yes, because we stood out there in the car forever
and it
while it was
started
raining.
raining.
Yes,
Yeah,
and did we call each other that night or was it the next night? We were on the phone for a very long time.
I think it was the next night.
I think so too. I think that might have been what I told you. I think it might have been that phone call the next night.
No, 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 no. It was the next weekend. We kind of talked off and on through the week, and it was the next weekend, and it was the birthday party that I held for
Yes.
for the two boys, and
Yes.
um and you happened to see me walking in, and you stopped by and said hi, and then you came over later, and you kissed me. That was when you kissed me, and then I asked you, and you told me
Perhaps.
that there was no bug girl.
Perhaps. There was
Yeah,
no bug girl though.
there was no bug girl.
No, it was all ploy,
It definitely was.
and it's worked out. So
It really has.
it was my
It
big
worked out for you well.
it was my biggest win in life. So
Oh,
so
that's cute.
so okay, yeah. So that's how we started. We got started,
Yeah.
and
And technically, even our first kiss was not normal because I was laughing, and I don't even know how we got on the topic of animals, the sounds animals make. And I was running through a list of every animal I could think of and making the sounds, and he kissed me to stop me from making animal sounds.
yeah. Well, that might have just been desperation. I'm not sure how I've ever heard you make animal sounds since. So
I don't even remember why I was
I
doing it. I don't know if
who
we were talking
knows?
zoos. I mean, we had kids, and
I don't
maybe
know.
zoos for the topic of conversation. But
I
I
don't know.
pretty much knew. I remember thinking to myself that number one, holy crap, my grandma was right. And then followed by, oh man, this isn't good.
But well, you have to
Because I,
tell why you said your grandma was right.
um, my grandmother, my grandma, I'm not gonna say because there we go. My grandmother, um, had to go into the hospital, and she was going to have surgery the next morning, and I went to see her that night. And we were talking, and she asked me how dating was going, and I said, well, let's just put it this way. It's a good thing that I'm a strong, independent woman who is capable of doing things on her own. And, and she laughed, and she said, I made the comment that, after my grandpa died, she never remarried, and she said, basically told me that, he was the love of her life, and that's why she never married. And she looked at me and said, do you think you've already had the love of your life? And I told her, dear God, no. She said, I see you getting remarried. And she said, and I see you with a lot of kids. She said, I think you're going to have 3 more kids. And then in walks this guy with 3 kids. Because I laughed and told her, I'm like, I had my tubes tied, Grandma. I ain't having 3 more kids. And then in walks this handsome devil with blue eyes and
3 kids.
3 kids.
Yep.
And yeah. And I knew I was in trouble because you were pretty special.
Yeah. So sometime later, well, let's just skip ahead.
Yes,
We ended up moving in with each other,
we did.
and I had an apartment, which was clearly it wasn't going to work, because you had just started buying a mobile home that we moved into
Yes,
that had what 3 bedrooms,
3 bedrooms.
and there were 7 of us. So there will
There
be
was a lot of damn
yes,
people in that mobile home.
there'll be lots of stories about the living circumstances over time. So we'll just leave it
Yes,
for now. We'll leave it at that, and and then sometime later we did get married, and
we did. Do you want to tell him where I was sitting the first time that you proposed to me? And I stopped you and
Sure.
said, "Do not even."
Sure. Go ahead.
I was on the toilet. I am
Yes.
going to the bathroom and he's standing there and I realize what he's about to do. And I said, "Do not even. Not now."
Well, I was going for the element of surprise, and
Oh, yeah.
that could be very. I mean, that'd be telling of our whole relationship right there, just because how humorous it is, and
Well,
everything
the
has been.
first,
And
and that was your second attempt at proposing. Your first attempt was actually a dissertation of all of the reasons he loved me that were basically a long list of his ex-wife's worst traits and that I didn't have them. And when I realized where it was going, I'm like, I cannot even believe this. If you're proposing to me, it never should have your ex-wife in it. And I was really irritated. Now, the toilet one, I was amused by.
yeah, so well,
But then, third time with the charm.
you don't have to act like I beat you down though, and eventually got you to say yes.
I would have said yes the first time, but I just felt it was bad, like karma,
Maybe
you
so,
know.
but we get ready. So let's kind of, as we kind of pull this to a close, we'll close it by talking about the wedding itself, and we kept it very simple. We were it was in a little fraternity organization lodge, just a small place, because we both had the church weddings, and well, that didn't go well for us, and we weren't doing that again. So
No, we were not.
and it was mostly just family and a few close friends. There wasn't a whole lot of people there.
I
Um,
did I did not wear white because given
no,
the fact that my two children gave me away, I felt the whole virginity thing was already given away.
yeah, it was, and very unique, situation. Your brother-in-law and my brother-in-law were in my were two of my groomsmen who are now no longer in the
No longer
families.
our brother-in-laws,
So
yes.
that didn't work out well. But I think everybody on your side, because it was your sister and my sister, right? So I mean, they're still there. So and
Yeah.
and
And
they're
surprisingly, in this day and age, still talking to us.
yeah, and then let's see what else was there. There was, let's see, the youngest Noah, who pretty much cried about the entire time
Wait, wait,
until,
wait.
huh?
He didn't. During the actual ceremony,
Yes,
he didn't. During the pictures before,
yeah, he's in none of those.
yeah, he's in none of those because he cried nonstop. He did not want to stand. He didn't want to be held. And knowing him now, that's just par for the course,
Yes, yes, he was
But
only happy in two circumstances. Really, that was when we went to light the unity candle as a
yes, because
family, and he
he wanted
tried to
to
blow the
blow them
flames
out.
out.
Yes.
And then when we gave him cake, he was very happy with the cake.
We have the best picture of him sitting, and literally he's got cake like crumbs all over his face because that had to
Yes,
have been like his fourth piece of cake.
which that's very telling of Noah. That's Noah in a
Yeah.
nutshell. Let's see, Isaac, the oldest, was
Yes.
dancing nonstop, and
Yes.
that's very telling of him.
We have photos that show that as well.
Yes, and Bryce and Jacob, they probably sat off in a corner conversing amongst each other because them being the same age, they had this tendency to, I don't know, almost have
Yes.
this little inside fraternity between them because they had a lot of unique shared experiences at school and things.
Oh,
Uh, to the point that we had to make sure they were not ever in the
they
same
were no
class.
longer, yes, they were in the same kindergarten class. And keep in mind, that's another kind of weird thing. The kids, we did not set that up. They just happened to be in the
Yes.
same kindergarten class.
Yes.
And so there will be lots of stories about that year in kindergarten.
Yes.
And but they're only a month apart. So
Yeah.
literally, they just became the best of pals.
Yes. And well, yeah, and there's a lot of that to this day because even that we have a family group text, and even today, those two were back and forth with some
Yeah.
very weird ass humor stuff that only those two. Well, not even those two. All the boys will get it, but they
Yeah.
were going back and forth and whatever. And
Yeah.
and then let's see. Then there's stories about Xander that's kind of unique to this time period. We'll save that because this is a much
Yeah.
much bigger thing that'll take a whole episode, and so that'll come to light in another episode. We'll talk about that at a different
Yes,
time.
but anywhere Bryce and Logan were, Xander was about 3 steps behind,
Yes,
being just a year younger.
Yes. So, but that's it. So that's the wedding. That's when it, everything became official and went from there. And so as we go forward, we're gonna have lots of stories, and it won't be this broad scope where we talk about such a long period of time. It'll be very specific about a particular story, because there's a ton of them, and this whole idea stemmed because that's what we do. We sit around a lot of times. We work together, or when we're texting or talking or doing the Zoom calls, and a story will come up like this, and we'll laugh and talk about it, and we just really just thought, well, why are we not recording some of these? Because they're funny, right. And other people's going to think they're funny, and other people are going to learn that, you know what, parenting a family is not perfect, and there's no book.
Yep.
And you do what you can do, and sometimes it turns out, it always turns out okay if you just do your best and stick with it. There's some ground rules to parenting, and we'll talk about those as we go through these things. And if you do them, everything turns out okay, and everybody's going to laugh at it one day because things go wrong.
And sometimes even when they're apart, as long as you stick together and you've got each other's back, that is the biggest lesson to know about family. Yes. Is, we've got 5 adult kids. We live, 500 miles away from 4 of them. And we're as close today, and they are all as close today as ever. And, like he said, we did not get a handbook to marriage, and we definitely did not get a handbook to kids. But as long as you're doing with the best of intentions, the worst thing that's going to have things, you just have to have a sense of humor and laugh at yourself sometimes.
Yeah. So that's what it is. Don't expect, it's not going to be some deep podcast. We're not going to give a bunch of life lessons, but we're going to tell you what we learned from it a little bit because it ties into the stories. And basically what it's going to do is if you listen to it and you've got kids or you've got family, you're going to realize, hey, all families are screwed up and all families are humorous. And that's just the way it is. So maybe I'm not as weird as what I thought I was. So
you are as weird as what you thought you were.
I don't care. I don't really care. That's another thing you're going to care. We don't really care what people think. So that's, we don't care.
No. So that is true.
so that's it. That's the remnants. That's the background and the introduction into the Family is Hard podcast. Like we said, we're going to discuss the humorous side of parenting and family life from our personal experience. And do keep in mind, this one wasn't that bad, but some of them will definitely not be safe for children or safe to listen to aloud at work because there's some topics that are pretty deep and I don't even know how to put it. Very adult oriented, I guess. Okay, not that it's going to be graphic. I don't want to get that impression.
No, but no, we won't be talking graphically. But there's just things that happen and realize, you know what? Yeah, this probably isn't good for a kid to hear right now.
And we don't really watch our language either, so that's not going to be a thing.
Don't.
So again, you can find us on Twitter at Family is Hard. And if you're going to join in there and tell some stories of your own, use the hashtag Family is Hard so that we can find your posts and make sure you tag us in them. And you can go on Facebook and look up the Family is Hard companion group. It's at facebook.com/groups/Family is Hard. And that's it for this episode. We'll be back for the next one. I am Dave.
And I am Monica.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye. Have a good day.